Yeah. For today's Bible study class, we're going to be concentrating on the part of the Bible called the Torah. That's the first 5 books. The word Torah means law, and the Torah is the law. For Christians and Jews, it is the law written by God. It is transcribed by Moses. The Talmud is an encyclopedic commentary on the laws of the Torah. My paper version is 17 volumes long. It's rambling, it's disorganized. It discusses everything several times, and it extends those laws to contemporary times. Times that were contemporary 15 to 1800 years ago. The Midrash Rabbah is similar to the Talmud, but it's shorter. It focuses just on the Torah. It's just as authoritative. And many of the sages, the rabbis that wrote these works are called the sages, traditionally, and so I tend to refer to them that way. When I say the sages, that's who I'm talking about. Many of the early sages of the Midrash were also the writers of the Talmud. But the most revered sage of all time is Moses ben Maimonides, who wrote the Codes of Maimonides, or the Mishnah Torah. He took all these works and he organized them and he codified the laws, and the codes are about that long. Now, each of these 3 works does a good bit of biblical revisionism. They take the hard edge off the Torah. But fortunately, the Midrash and the Talmud did not coordinate which edges they were going to take off. Maimonides tried to take them all off, but if you read Maimonides and then go back to the appropriate places in the Talmud and the Midrash, you start to see those edges again. So that's the procedure. Let's see how it works with the law of jealousy, which is given in the Bible, in the book of Numbers. And the Lord said to Moses, "Say to the people of Israel, if any man's wife goes astray and acts unfaithfully against him, or if the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he is jealous of his wife, though she has not defiled herself, then the man shall bring his wife to the priest, and the priest shall bring her near, and set her before the Lord, and in his hand the priest shall have the water of bitterness that brings the curse." Sounds like something ominous is brewing here. And note that the wife in question is going to go through whatever it is, whether she did anything or not. Then the priest shall make her take an oath, saying, "If you have gone astray and you have defiled yourself, and some man other than your husband has lain with you, then may this water that brings the curse pass into your bowels and make your body swell. Then the priest shall make the woman drink the water of bitterness that brings the curse, and the water that brings the curse shall enter into her and cause bitter pain. Then if she has defiled herself and has acted unfaithfully against her husband, her body shall swell and her thighs shall fall away, and the woman shall become an execration among her people." That sounds more than a little unpleasant. And remember, that's going to happen whether she was guilty or not. That is, even if he is jealous of his wife, though she has not defiled herself. Now, that may sound a bit unfair, and the sages of the Midrash were concerned that readers might get that impression, so they added a note. When a woman is secluded with her husband and is engaged in intercourse with him, and at the same time her heart is with another man whom she has seen on the road, there is no adultery greater than this. Now, this is strictly conjectural. We're leaving the text here, but my guess is that was written by one of the sages who, on his way to work that day, saw a beautiful woman on the road. So in these days, the Jimmy Carter, Michael Shermer kind of adultery of the heart was absolutely disavowed and disallowed for women. Michael, don't worry, it was a very different story for men. Well, this ordeal of bitter waters is not well described in the Bible. It sort of presumes that everybody knew what it was, and at the time everybody did. So we have to turn to Maimonides, who pieced it together from the Talmud and the Midrash, but of course Maimonides left a few bits on the editing room floor. I'm going to try to stick some of those back in, and what I'm going to read, bits from the Talmud are in italics and from the Midrash underlined. What was the procedure for administering the water to the wayward wife? If she stood upon her plea that she was innocent, they took her to the east gate of the temple court. They gathered a great throng of women around her, for all women who were there were in duty bound to behold her, as it is said that all women may be taught not to do after your lewdness, quoting the Bible. Also, any man who wished to come and behold her was allowed to do so. Thereupon, one of the priests of the temple court approached her, grasped her garments at the front, and ripped them apart until he had laid bare her bosom, after which he fetched an Egyptian rope to remind her of the Egyptian doing that she had committed. Notice she is presumed guilty. And tied it above her breasts. The water of bitterness was in the vessel held by the priest, so that she would be made to see the water. He must let her see the water so as to instill terror into her. If she says, I will not drink, they beat her with the flat side of a sword and chide her and make her drink by force. If she says, I refuse to drink, they insert iron tongs into her mouth and make her drink by force. If she was defiled, her face immediately turned pale, her eyes bulged, and her veins filled. Her mouth would emit an evil odor, her neck would swell, her flesh would decay, and all of those present cried, away with her, lest her menstrual blood should start flowing, seeing that a menstruating woman would cause the women's section of the temple to become unclean. Thereupon she was removed from that section where she was standing. After this, first her belly became swollen, then her thighs fell away, she fell down, and finally she died. Death is a serious life event for most people. Do men ever have a tendency to become irrationally jealous, once in a while? And what kind of jeopardy did that put a woman in? Well, most of these women wouldn't have too hard a time convincing their husband he was the greatest lover she ever had, because he's the only lover she ever had. Did she have to convince him that he was the greatest lover she could ever imagine, lest he think that she saw some man on the road? No small trick. Well, what if a man wanted to get rid of his wife, but he really didn't have enough animosity to want her to be tortured and killed? Fortunately, the Bible gives us the law of divorce. When a man takes a wife and marries her, if then she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some indecency in her, he writes her a bill of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house. That's it. This was before the lawyers got a hold of it. Now the Talmud put a point on that. He may divorce her even if she has merely spoilt his food, since it says, because he hath found some unseemly thing in her, he may divorce her even if he finds another woman more beautiful than she is, as it says, it cometh to pass if she find no favor in his eyes. I think that part was written by the same guy who saw that woman on the way to work. Well, what if he wants to keep his wife, but he just wants to get more out of her? There are 5 kinds of work that any wife must perform for her husband. She must spin, wash his face, hands, and feet, pour his cup, spread his couch, and wait on him. A wife who refuses to perform any kind of work that she is obligated to do may be compelled to perform it, even by scourging her with a rod. He could beat his wife with a weapon. Now, that's all the time I have to discuss treatment and attitudes toward Israelite women by Israelite men. What about the rest of the women in the world? The non-Israelite women, especially the non-Israelite non-virgins. Well, we're just going to look at one example on that. They warred against Midian as the Lord commanded Moses. This is from the Bible. And slew every male. And the people of Israel took captive the women of Midian and their little ones. They brought the captives and the booty and the spoil to Moses. That was a 4-day walk, by the way. I just cut that part out. And Moses was angry with the officers of the army and the commanders of thousands and the commanders of hundreds who had come from service in the war. Moses said to them, have you let all the women live?